Good afternoon. This is Carlos Samaniego at Tax Debt Live, coming to you here from Redlands, California. It's 12:11 p.m. And man, do we have a show for you today. Um, First thing that I want to bring up, that if you got a letter 11 in the mail recently and you're watching this right now, this show is going to be for you, because most taxpayers will not get that letter 11. But if you've been avoiding your taxes, not filing your tax returns, there's a very good chance you're going to actually get that letter. And that's one of the things that we're going to be covering in today's show, based on a phone call I had a little earlier today. And then the second thing I'm going to be talking about is a situation where something I dealt with this afternoon, where somebody called me regarding a multi-six-figure tax debt. And during the conversation, one of the things I realized, the reason he called, he was trying to figure out two things: how to get into an installment agreement, and two, how to protect his wife from that large six-figure installment agreement. And the more we talked, the more I found out that, guess what? There was a very good chance he doesn't even owe the money. So, but I'm going to open up the show with something very important. If you guys are on my social media account or any of that, you probably saw my post on Monday where I actually called 911 on myself. That's right. I actually called 911 on myself. The former Army medic, EMT, did that for almost 13 years of my life. Was actually in the back of an ambulance as a patient, not as the person treating the patient. And that was a scary moment for me. But there's an IRS lesson in it as well. And to make a long story short, got up early in the morning, did my morning walk with Bruno, who I talk about all the time, actually worked out, got ready for work, and decided I was going to work in the home office for a few hours. And as I'm sitting there typing away, I basically noticed my heart start racing really fast. And make a long story short, ended up taking my blood pressure. Blood pressure had skyrocketed to 178/89. And if you don't monitor your blood pressure on a regular basis, that's not normal. Normal is typically 120/80. I had no idea what was going on. And neighbor came over. He was actually there. Liz had actually called him. Liz hasn't been home all week long. And the neighbor came over, took my blood pressure, and then a few minutes later took that blood pressure again, and my blood pressure was at 208/89, which is dangerous, a dangerous number, especially for somebody who had never had that blood pressure that high. So I decided to call 911 on myself. We have a family history of stroke, so I wasn't going to mess around here. And this is where the IRS lesson comes into play. Again, called 911 because I saw the number and I knew how dangerous it was to be at that number. And I wasn't going to guess whether I was going to have a heart attack or a stroke. Let's let the professionals try to figure this thing out. Was I scared? 100%. I was 100% scared. And I'll talk more details about this story. But to make a long story short, paramedics came. The guy that came into the ambulance happened to be a guy I worked with at the same ambulance company almost 40 years ago, 38, something like that. It's almost 40 years. And Carl, if you're ever watching this, thank you for being there for me. And we noticed the blood pressure started coming down pretty dramatically right after that 208 level. And to the point where I was comfortable not getting rushed to the emergency room, and eventually did get my neighbor help me get over to the hospital, had it checked out. And first lesson I learned is that you don't not stop taking your blood pressure medicine. And I did that accidentally. You know, we all get busy in life, right? This is like an IRS problem. You get busy in life, you're getting IRS letters. We got a bunch today. You see it, and I'm like, I'm going to get to it. Same thing with me. I had forgotten to take my blood pressure medicine, or I'd run out of blood pressure medicine, had ordered the blood pressure medicine. It was sitting over at the pharmacy. I just had to go pick it up. But life got in the way, and you know what? You go to work, you're dealing with family stuff, school stuff. You know, you're just doing life, and it got away from you. Same thing with me. You know, I was supposed to go pick that up. I'm like, oh, I forgot to pick it up. I'll do it tomorrow. Do it tomorrow. Ended up going on a trip overnight. Here I am, 10 days without blood pressure medicine that I was on, and now I have a dangerous blood pressure level 208 over 89, and ended up calling 911. I let it go to an emergency crisis. And that's what people do with IRS letters. And the lesson here is don't treat your IRS problems the same way. You know, the letters that are coming to you in the mail, you know they're there. A lot of people don't open those letters. Those are the warning signs. That's like your blood pressure slowly creeping up, your blood pressure level. And then it will get to a point, like in my situation, that blood pressure got to a point where I was at a dangerous level and I had to do something right away. And I did that. I called 911 because I didn't want to take that chance. Same thing with those letters. Those letters, it will come to the point where you get that CP 50, the CP 502, 501, 503, letter 504. This is the blood pressure kind of creeping up. And then you get the letter 11, and then you have a wage garnishment or a bank levy. Now it becomes an emergency crisis that you're dealing with, a financial emergency crisis. Luckily, we can solve that pretty quickly. You know, when it's a medical crisis, you know what, you can do a lot of damage to yourself. Fortunately for me, you know, kind of in that story is I'm feeling great this week. Got the blood pressure medicine. Blood pressure is back to normal. Don't have to, not really kind of stressed out about it. But I'm monitoring it on a regular basis. Here's what I'm not going to do anymore. I'm not going to not take my blood pressure or forget to take it or let life get in the way to take care of my own blood pressure, because you can't do that. And if you guys can see there, if you guys want to join me live, ask questions, please feel free. I think I just posted it in there. I'll post it again in the stream here. But that was the situation, and I'll probably talk more about that situation later in its own separate video. But I had a bunch of people reach out to me. I had sent an email out regarding this to my list, what had happened. A bunch of you guys reached out and wanted to make sure I was okay. I was okay. I'm okay now. So with that, let's get into that first, what I talked about, this letter 11. And let me show you exactly what a letter 11 is. And what this letter 11 is, that it's a letter that the IRS sends out. I'm going to share my screen here. There we go. It looks something similar to this. You know, this is an older version of it, found it online from 2018. The wording, it can look slightly different, but the main thing I want you to take a look at is the wording. Your account has been assigned to enforcement action. Please call us about your unpaid taxes. And you'll notice up here in the top right corner here, it has LT11, letter 16. Here's the thing, guys. When you get this letter, when that letter shows up, here's what I want you to understand, is that at this point, that means the letter 16 is not your biggest problem. The big problem that you got is that clock started running the moment you got that letter. The clock has been running. The IRS is not angry at you. They're not vindictive. All these letters are kind of automated. And basically, this letter is saying that you have been formally assigned, your IRS has formally assigned your account for enforcement collections. Not threatens, they've assigned it. So basically, what the IRS has done, they've assigned that you have a human person looking at your account. Now, two things will trigger this: an unpaid balance, unfiled tax returns. And sometimes both are on that same notice. It's called kind of a combo account, where you owe for some years, you haven't filed for other years, and the IRS is just kind of packaging it all together for one type of escalation. So when you get this letter, there is a very, very good chance the IRS is going to assign a revenue officer to your case. So for most people, kind of what I did with my blood pressure, I kind of put it off, not picking it up. when you get this letter, this is almost your sign that it's time to start doing something. You have to resolve this. Now, the IRS is actually giving you a time frame. It actually says on the notice, you got 10 days on this notice. It's not a suggestion. This is basically saying that if you don't do something within this 10 days, that the IRS is going to kind of step up the enforcement, and the next automated stage is going to be triggered. So, and here's the thing, guys. And the person that called me from Florida earlier today, a family member of theirs had gotten this notice, and I told him, I said, kind of get this thing off the screen. And I told him, I'm like, okay, if you got that letter, here's what you already know. You already know that they're already looking at it. They're probably already done their research in terms of the assets that you probably already have. And your family member can no longer avoid this thing. So he actually retained us this morning. We're going to try to figure out what to do. And here's the thing. He owes almost $200,000 of tax debt, multiple six figures here. And we got to figure out what options are available for him. And every tax problem has an option, whether it's if you can afford to pay back the option, it might be an installment agreement, it might be a partial pay installment agreement. If they don't have the ability to pay, there is that hardship option. And then the final one is the offer and compromise, where you can settle the debt if you qualify. So there are options, but the big option here, which is not an option, the option is that you got to deal with this letter because IRS enforcement is going to happen. Okay. And that takes me to our next call on this show. The next call happened to be about a client that actually called me about 2 hours ago, actually, and we had a conversation. And this was a situation where he was just calling me. He kind of wanted to get some more information regarding getting into an installment plan to discuss his over $500,000 tax debt. Basically, he's got a tax debt over $500,000. He's looking to protect his spouse in this situation. And he wanted to know how we can protect his spouse and how he can get an installment agreement on this. But what's interesting, he got the bill already. The more he talked, the more I realized there is a very good chance the tax returns were done incorrectly. Because based on the scenario that he was telling me, it didn't even seem like he had taxable income. It sounded as though the person that used that did his taxes counted income that was not income. It was more of an investment into his business and not income to his business, which could potentially have caused this $600,000 tax bill. So that takes me to that other question. That other scenario is that just because you have a tax bill, one of the things that we're doing when we do our initial triage, for every client that we do, we actually do a kind of a medical triage, the way an EMT, paramedic, EMS does, an emergency room does, right? When there's a medical problem or a challenge, they don't just go into a treatment of what's going on. They have to do a triage to see what is causing the medical issue, the underlying medical issue. And we want to know what's causing the financial tax issue that got you in trouble. And based on his conversation with me, I told him and sent him a message saying, I don't believe, based on what you're telling me, that $500,000 tax debt belongs to you. And that should be challenged. So again, those are the two big things I wanted to bring up on Tax Debt Live today. You'll notice Andrew's not here today. He's still on his Mexican cruise. I believe they get back tomorrow or Sunday. They get back on Sunday. Hopefully he's refreshed to get back to work. I know they're moving up to Monterey, California here at the end of the month. So if you have any questions, thank you for those submitting your questions this last week. And again, thanks to everybody that reached out to me to kind of check on me to make sure I was okay. With that, we're going to wrap up Tax Debt Live. I hope you have a wonderful weekend. And I will be talking to you guys next Friday. Talk to you later. Bye-bye for now.